Can I welcome you, ladies and gentlemen, to this meeting of the Environment and Climate Change Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is taking place in the Spark and Hoe Committee Room at County Hall, Glenfield, though some officers will be joining us online. The meeting is being webcast live to the public on YouTube. Please turn your microphones on when you're speaking and turn it off when you've finished. In addition to the committee members, we also have in attendance the leader of the council, Mr. Rushton. And can I also mention that it's Mr. Nick Chapman, one of our committee members' birthday today, and thank him for outstanding service at being here today. Okay, if I may, having put him on the spot. Item number 1 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of November 2021. Can I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on that date are taken as read, confirmed and signed? Can we agree? Thank you, members. Agenda item 2 is question time, and I've received no questions from members of the public. 3. Questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. I haven't received any questions from members under that standing order. And agenda item 4 is to advise you of any other items which are decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda, and there are no such urgent items. 5 is declarations of interest in respect of items on this agenda, and could I ask members if they have any declaration they wish to make? No. Thank you. 6, declarations of the party whip in accordance with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Procedure Rule 16. No. Thank you. And 7, presentation of petitions under Standing Order 35. I've not received any petitions under that standing order. So, to the substantive agenda. Our first main item is the medium-term financial strategy for 2022-23 to 25 to 26 on pages 11 and 28 of your agenda pack. The structure for considering the report is set out on the separate sheet which has been circulated to you, and I'm going to ask Anne Carruthers, the Director of Transport and Environment, to briefly introduce the report before we scrutinise the proposals. Anne.
Thank you, Chair. As you rightly say, this report deals with the proposed medium-term financial strategy, basically our budget for the next 4-year period, for our waste functions, waste disposal, as well as environment and the green agenda. The majority of the budget for this sits within the Environment and Transport Department. However, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that some of it sits within Corporate Resources and some within Chief Exec's Department as well. If I look at the revenue situation first, the position is summarised in Table 1 of your report for you, and that shows the proposed budget once we've accounted for growth across these service areas and the savings to be delivered again across these service areas. You'll see that for the coming financial year 22-23, the revenue budget is 32 million, which reduces to just over 30 million in 25-26, the final year of the MTFS period. The total spend next year is expected to be 36 million, with grants and income of 4 million, which takes us to a net budget of 32 million, that position I've just outlined. Table 2 of the report shows a breakdown of spend across the service areas, and 31 million of the 32 sits within the Environment and Transport Department. I'll just highlight for you 135,000 sits within Chief Exec, and that's on climate change, carbon reduction work, and 281 sits within Corporate Resources, and that's across the forestry and country parks function, which obviously comes into Environment and Green Agenda. A further breakdown is given in Appendix A, but happy to answer questions on that, Chair. I'll pause there.
Okay, nothing. In that sense, please continue.
Thank you. If we look at the growth situation now, so basically where further funding is required over previous year's budget, and that's shown in the table under paragraph 14. For environment and waste, you can see that there's 100,000 temporary growth has been removed. The pandemic led to more volumes of household waste, so we had forecast in 3.2% growth on those waste disposal costs for 21-22, this current year. We then forecast 2% for this year, expecting it to decline to reduce, and that 100,000 reflects that declining growth position, if you're following me. This removal, as I say, we're looking at that, reviewing it year on year, and we'll continue to hope to move back to what we'd worked to prior to the pandemic of 1% growth in waste disposal costs per annum. Work on the regional waste project to understand the feasibility of a new regional waste disposal approach has been delayed because of pandemic, and that reprofiling is shown there for you in that table. The committee will have seen media reports, I'm sure, on the shortage of HGV drivers nationally. This has affected our waste operation and hence the need to pay a market premium to HGV driver roles. As you'll see, we anticipate that this 45,000 growth will no longer be required by the end of the MTFS period, and that's reflected there with that zero in that last year. Another one I think is worth probably highlighting for you in terms of growth is we have 55,000 in for hydro-treated vegetable oil infrastructure. This in effect is upfront cost to allow us to shift our diesel fleet onto using HVO fuel. So while it's an upfront cost, it very much plays into the green agenda because significant reductions on our emissions from our own fleet there, and that's what that growth is for. If I look at the chief execs, as you'll see, there's 135,000 growth to support the working carbon reduction agenda, and in corporate resources, 100,000 has been allocated for tree nursery investment, which supports our commitment to plant 700,000 trees and the work under the tree strategy, as well as looking to the recovery work coming out of ash or dealing with the impacts of ash dieback across the county. I'll pause there, Chair, in case there's any questions.
Mr. Balter.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm interested in this hydro-treated vegetable oil to replace diesel. Will all our vehicles take that? Which one we're trying to aim at changing, or is there some modification needed to use that? And where is it going to be stored?
It will be stored in our depots, and that's where the infrastructure will be put into, for the actual tank, etc., or the infrastructure necessary to support that. I am told it can go into all of our diesel vehicles at the moment, and there's no issue with that. Time will tell, however, in the reality in terms of, the running of those, but according to the manufacturers, yes, it can be used in all our diesel vehicles.
We're going to try a small portion at a time, Chair, rather than change all the vehicles over and find out we've got a problem. I'd hate to find out we've got a mechanical problem down the line.
There will be an element of bringing them on, in a planned way across our services to make sure that we have got resilience in case there is any, unforeseen implications with the running of them.
Thank you, and that's super. Is there a time scale of the proposed completion of that yet?
To be honest, it's it's subject to the MTFS going through and being approved by full council. The money is available next financial year. We will be trying to bring that in place as soon as possible within that. So it just depends on order time, supply times, etc.
Okay, so it's a short test time after approval, and then it's full steam ahead, so to speak, with HVO. All right, that's lovely. Thank you. Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Just really quickly on the waste tonnage increases in terms of the shift from people working from the office to working from home and seeing that increase in our household waste. Has there been any corresponding reduction in commercial waste? And I know that you're not necessarily responsible for that, but how do we see that being managed over time? Because I think a lot of organisations have made the decision now to hybrid work going forward.
I might ask my colleague Joe, who's hopefully on the call, to come in on that one, but just we don't have the full sight of commercial waste because it's not something we're responsible for, as you say, therefore we don't monitor. However, we do offer limited trade waste systems at some of our sites, so I guess the opportunity for us is to maximise business there depending on where the waste is going through, which waste stream, because the less we can get through coming out through household waste, the less cost to us and as authority. And obviously, if there's more coming through commercial, if we can capitalise that through the income stream at our sites, the benefit as well. I'm just going to refer to Jo, if that's all right, Chair, in case she's got any further information on that one.
Yes, Joanna, if you'd like to add anything else.
Thank you, Chair. I think Anne largely covered what I was going to say. I think the short answer is it changed over time. When we were in full lockdown at the beginning of the pandemic, obviously commercial waste was in effect dried up. There was a huge change. But what we haven't seen is a settling of the waste trends. So we saw 20% increases in residual waste. You know, everyone started to shop online, etc. And we still haven't fully navigated the changes in waste streams. So commercially, in terms of the county council, our operations that we offer at some of our transfer stations is recovering, and we have a throughput, but there's sort of a unique sort of price point for that. We have a certain cohort of businesses that have recovered and are coming back to our service, but it is still in flux, I think, is the summary I would suggest.
Okay. Thank you, Joanna. Any further questions, members? Okay.
I'll move on to savings and the positions set out in paragraph 16. Overall, we're looking at 250,000 of savings in the coming financial year, rising to 1.67 million at the end of the MTFS period. The main driver of this, as you'll see, is the future residual waste strategy and reduced disposal costs. There's savings that are driven by new waste disposal procurements, so you know, when we're re-procuring big contracts, as well as more waste going into existing treatment facilities. Also includes savings from use of our own waste transfer site at Bardon, which is currently being constructed and should be online and operational in April time. Other savings worth mentioning are our RHWS service approach, which involves cost reductions arising from taking in the Whetstone site, which was the one remaining outsourced site up until we took that in, and you know, maximising opportunities there and growing income from the reuse side of the operation. That's something we've wanted to do for a period of time now. However, the pandemic has, you know, put a major pause on that because it's not something we could be promoting during that time, but it's something that we'll now turn our eye to again. The other savings initiatives I would pick out is forestry and country parks, where efficiencies and increasing income is expected to generate 250,000 by the end of the MTFS. As we have new savings targets under the MTFS, because you know the financial position continues to be challenging, we have a lot of work going under a category we call savings under development. These are projects that, you know, we are doing the work to see if there really is feasibility in them taking forward, and there's a number of those across our services, as you'll see. One I will just highlight for you is our continuous improvement approach. This is an initiative that our transformation unit colleagues started working firstly with us in highways on, and are now expanding out across other service areas. And it really is about a brainstorming with the managers and the people working in those areas about what else we could look at, because you'll all appreciate we've been trying to have been delivering savings for over a decade now. The easy things have been done. We're now having to be ever more creative. So, you know, we've highlighted a number of areas we could look at under that continuous improvement banner, and you'll see we've set a provisional target of 400,000. The work is ongoing, however, to see which elements of which initiatives will come to fruition and will then transfer into the committed savings for delivery. Green driver training across our staff to reduce fuel use. And as we convert to electric vehicles, however, we'll add to that green agenda in terms of reduced emissions. The latter will have upfront capital costs as we do green the fleet, because as we all know, EVs are more expensive than traditional vehicles, and the need for charging infrastructure investments required there. We are working up the business cases to understand the full life costs, however, because, you know, as you'll appreciate, ongoing revenue costs of delivering that with alternative fuel sources substantially add to that business case. We'll also look at generating further income through our waste transfer stations, and I've just mentioned the new one that's coming online. And it's worth noting the key proposals under the government's resources and waste strategy. They have potential to reduce our waste disposal costs, and we'll be looking at those closely as they come to fruition. And that's extended, particularly the extended producer responsibilities, where the producer has to demonstrate, I think it's 65% of their packaging has to be recyclable. So that then has implications on the waste chain and our costs. So the potential savings from initiatives like that. But still a long way to go in some of those, so we will closely monitor them. I'll pause there, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Bolter.
Thank you, Chair. Several things. It's a big reduction in the wood waste from £40 to £10 a tonne. So I wonder how that's going to be achieved. The other thing I'm a bit confused about, ET9 trade waste on page 16, but on page 25 it's ET10. So I don't know which one's right. And can you explain the in-house operation at Barden, exactly what's going to happen there?
Thank you. I'll maybe just start and I'll hand over to Joe again, who will have some of that detail on that. The wood waste market costs and changes on that. Barden, in terms of the in-house operation, is waste transfer, so it's about bulking up and transferring onto larger vehicles so that it goes to its end disposal point, be that in county, be that out of county, wherever it is. So it's about that bulking up facility, but obviously we have the option as well to offer those to the market, those services to the market, and that trade waste as well. So they will be looking at other opportunities there. I'll hand over to Jo again, because she's likely got a bit more detail on it.
Could you just add one more thing, which goes to Jo, Chair? That's ET8 reuse.
Okay,
I know Jo is very keen on.
If you want to do reuse now,
it's actually ET8 and we're doing the savings. So.
It's up to you.
Yes, please.
You mentioned it. You want to do it now?
Yes.
Go on.
That's it. You know.
But will I start? Sorry, was the question what
when are we going to
reuse
start?
is? When we're going to start? We're now looking at it. I think we're now looking at it because we're coming out of COVID. I think the caveat I would put on that, and I'm sure again members are aware, that we're stretched across the waste service at the moment due to staff shortages, both from things like driver shortages as well as COVID illness and isolation. So when we're up and running and fully staffed again, that's when we'll have the opportunity to look at that, because the conditions are right to do it.
Jo, if you'd like to add anything.
Thanks, Chair. I think Anne's covered them all, but just maybe to add, only because she gave me a bit more time, Chair, and for Councillor Bolter. The wood is, we'll in effect already realise it. It's a contractual saving. We've negotiated a saving on the price we pay from 40 down to 10, so it's a financial benefit to the council. Barden, I think Anne covered it. It's a transfer station. It's a really important strategic asset for the service. We have suffered for a period of years, I think as some councillors on this call will know, in terms of our resilience. In years ago, the mechanical biological treatment facility run by Tarmac down in Coatesbatch ceased to operate, and that left us with no all-weather solution. So in effect, when there's high winds, the landfills close, or there's closures at some of our other disposal points, then we are very vulnerable in terms of the distances we have to travel to redirect our residual waste. So we're managing that through reletting contracts, but we are also building Barden, so that will give us holding capacity over and above the full transfer stations we've already got at Whetstone and Loughborough, so it will build resilience into the system. And maybe all I'd add on ET8 in terms of reuse. The target in the MTFS is on to a contractor for reuse, but the business case we are going to refresh because the market's still in recovery and we need to reprofile that spend just to be sure that we can deliver year-on-year improvements in generating those savings. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. And so really then in summary, Borden adds resilience. So we're in a much better position there, and we're also making income savings. Excellent. All right. Anne?
Sorry, Chair, but just have it corrected. Is it trade waste ET9 on page 16, or is it ET10 on page 25?
I have to defer to the report writers, Councillor Bolter.
Sorry, just glancing, ET9 on page 16 in the table under paragraph 16 refers to our RHWS site service approach, which is looking at things like reuse and things like operational hours, how we run those, driving the savings from Whetstone. Sorry, the other number was ET.
No, it says trade waste income. If we go to, where is it? ET10 on another chart. It says trade waste there, but it's only an academic point. I just wonder which one that was all.
Sorry, Councillor Bolter, if I'm coming through you, Chair. ET9 is trade waste income that we generate from offering a trade waste service at the transfer station at Whetstone. So we have trade customers that use that service, and that income figure relates to that. And sorry, you'll forgive me, I'm just checking the paper in relation to the, sorry, where you said in relation to your second reference, Councillor Bolter.
As page 25, EC10.
It's my understanding, sorry, and I know Anne and I will both be looking, is, yeah, I think that, I'm afraid I think that is somewhat a typo potentially on the line references. They're the same thing, the trade waste income potentially, I think, but we'll check that.
Thank you, officers. Mr. Bolter, you're happy with that? Oh, I wouldn't say that. Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Anne?
Right, it's probably worth just highlighting some factors that could impact on our MTFS position as set out there, because, you know, we're in a very changeable market at the moment. We've already touched on current staffing issues and challenges we have. So at the moment, we're paying market premium across a lot of our posts. We're having to employ agency staff where we can't recruit, which obviously has additional costs to it. And, you know, even then we're still challenged in having sufficient resources to deliver our service. Inflation in construction, inflation in particular, a significant risk to us on our normal supplies, but obviously in our capital build as well. And I mentioned Bardon already, and we're also doing significant works at our Kipworth, recycling and household waste sites, and they also impact our contract costs themselves. We've talked about the waste growth volumes that we've been working to. If they don't settle down to that 1%, again, we'll have further implications, but that's what we're working to at the moment, that, you know, it goes down post this coming year to 1%, and we'll just need to review the market as we go forward, but, you know, it could have significant financial implications for us. And the last point to highlight is the potential additional cost of delivering on carbon reduction and net zero. It's likely many initiatives will need at least some kind of seed funding. And we also have the challenge of potentially conflicting priorities, such as that additional cost when we're in the financial position we are, as all local authorities up and down the country are, versus carbon reduction, or supporting growth across the county, which will have implications for emissions if it's not done in the right way. On a positive note, however, the County Council has set up a £2 million fund for carbon reduction schemes. I think the challenge for all of us will be to maximise the opportunities from this fund. I'll just pause there.
Okay, Rosita.
Thank you, Chairman. And just a point of clarification, I think on table 28, it lists 2 million to complete the kipwa scheme, and the scheme all in all was 5.5 million. So was that extra 3.5 million prior to 22? And so the 2 million are accounted for in the budget between 22 and 26.
Yeah, there has been spend on that to date. So in this financial year, as you'll see there, that breakdown is from financial year 22-23, so it reflects the spend in that year. So what was spent so far is not shown on that. So you're absolutely right. The overall total was around about 5 million, and that 2 million is what's been spent in that financial year.
Thank you. And Joanna, if you have anything else to add, one question from me is, and for our customers that use Kibworth, when will it be reopened finally now?
Do you want me to answer that, Chair? We're aiming for the works to be completed. If you ask me to nail it to a month, we're aiming for October of this year, so it'll be the autumn.
That's lovely, thank you. Right, Anne?
Last section on capital, summarised in table 3, which we've just been looking at, where you'll see in 22-23 this coming year, we have the kind of highest capital spend over the 4-year period of 3.8 million, and you can see the breakdown there. Main reason for this is the completion of Barden, the waste transfer station, and Kibworth, we've just mentioned. Corporate resources also have elements of capital work covering school collaboration on resource efficiency, which delivers energy efficiency projects within schools. And corporate resources also implement electric vehicle charging points across our estate, so that will account for some of that capital there as well. And details of the breakdown are in Appendix C. You'll also see in paragraph 30, there's a fairly long list of potential future capital projects across our waste operation, as well as country parks and related to energy savings initiatives. Business cases will be developed for those over time to see whether they go forward as capital projects. That's it for me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Any further questions from members? Just almost an aside, Anne, for visitors here at County Hall, how many EV points do we have?
Apologies, you put me on the spot. I'll need to come back to you with an actual figure. It's our corporate property colleagues that oversee that, so I'd need to consult with them, but I can certainly update you post-meeting, Chair.
I know we have them, but I'm just wondering how many, but that's fine. Good, it's all right. There were flashing lights here. Okay, then if we've nothing else on that item, I'll move on to the next one, which is the Net Zero Carbon 2045 document, a roadmap for Leicestershire. And am I right, Anne, that Joanna is going to take this one for us? Okay, so Joanna, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, everybody. So the purpose today is to update members on the Council's ongoing response to climate change, present key findings of an important baseline report for Leicestershire, which includes some scenario mapping linked to our net zero ambitions. And then also in terms of next steps, I just wanted to set out the process and timeline for developing that net zero strategy and action plan. So the report itself sets out local policy, national context, as well as the actions that the Council has taken to date And it then concentrates on that baseline report detail, which was commissioned as a comprehensive evidence base to inform carbon reduction for the benefit of all partners across the county, not just the council. The report includes a comprehensive inventory of baseline carbon emissions for Leicestershire. That's from 2019. It also has the business as usual trajectory based on current policy commitments at the local and national level, and 3 more ambitious pathway scenarios that have been modelled out to 2045. A more detailed summary of the findings from the roadmap research is included in Appendix A, but if I just pick out some of the key findings to note, the total annual greenhouse gas emissions baseline in 2019 for Leicestershire is estimated at around 8.5 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent. And this includes what we call territorial emissions of about 4.5 million, so inside the county, and consumption emissions, and those are explained in more detail in the report. The predominant emission sources for Leicestershire are road transport, domestic energy use, and industrial and commercial energy use. And then the balanced and tailwind pathways, which are referenced in the report, both achieve notable reductions in emissions by 2045, so 91% and 95% respectively. That tailwinds pathway is also notable in that it is the only pathway that delivers 50% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030. And there's a lot of evidence internationally that this decade that we're currently in is that definitive decade for climate action. None of the pathways modelled are Paris Agreement compliant pathways, although the balanced and tailwind pathways approach that 2045 target. And again, if there are any questions on that at the end, we'll be happy to try and take them. Under all emission pathways, Leicestershire is left with some annual residual emissions, and the largest emission categories are road transport, industry, which includes agriculture, where's my brain gone, and building emissions. So to meet Leicestershire's net zero target by 2045, we need to achieve really significant reduction in demand for energy, county-wide switch to low carbon fuel and energy, significant reductions in material demand, and public and stakeholder engagement and action. The net zero must be progressed within the context of other environmental objectives, so they don't sit in silos, things that will enhance biodiversity and provide resilience. They all interact with one another. Carbon capture and storage will be required, as well as the reductions I've already referenced. Offsetting carbon should be considered as a last resort on all possible reductions once they've been delivered. The conclusions I think that are to be drawn from the research that are worth noting are that the net zero carbon 2045 target for Leicestershire can't be delivered by the council working on its own. The pathways to net zero are challenging, but they're certainly feasible with rapid and deep emissions cuts over the next decade to try and limit that warming in line with the Paris Agreement. Investments will be required from all sectors, and there are opportunities for core benefits for the economy, society and nature from that just and fair net zero transition. If I move on then maybe to developing the strategy and the action plan, which is covered from paragraph 25 through to 38 in your report. The council has a high level ambition to demonstrate strong place leadership on this issue and to retain oversight of that 2045 target on behalf of the county. So officers will be recommending a bespoke scope for the county to 2045 target based on best practice, the data that we have available, and to reflect the County Council's levels of control and influence. The strategy and action plan will include a commitment to address all emissions wherever possible, to develop a comprehensive view of what action is required, and hopefully identifying the County Council, partnerships and other aspirational actions which require more funding and policy, in some case national statutes, to change. The leadership role and associated partner engagement will be developed over time to allow the council to progress its own plans quickly. But in the short term, the council is proposing to continue to work through existing partnerships to shape the draft plans and build momentum and hopefully invite that wider partner support. The scale and pace of change required means it's essential to work with and inspire other stakeholders and residents to engage with the central government, and a public and stakeholder consultation will be conducted on the content of the draft strategy and action plan through the Have Your Say webpage. Opportunities for additional funding and resources are being pursued at the moment for more ambitious public engagement and innovative consultation solutions in the short, medium and long term. And this committee, this scrutiny committee, will receive a report on that draft net zero strategy and action plan as part of the consultation. And that's proposed, I think, to come to you on the 14th of June this year. Just quickly then, if I just touch on resources and timelines to finish. In terms of resource implications, the Cabinet did approve a budget of almost £500,000, that £450,000 back in September 2019. And the development work in terms of developing the strategy and action plan will be delivered from those existing resources. A resourcing plan aligned to the plans will be presented to Cabinet with the final strategy and plan when it goes for approval. And financing net zero will require the submission of funding bids for grants and the leverage of private investment. In addition, I think there'll be a drive to pursue opportunities to secure revenue income from carbon reduction projects and programmes, and there's work planned to look at those funding strategies going forward. And lastly, I think in terms of timetabling for decisions, the draft strategy and plan will be presented to Cabinet on the 29th of March, requesting approval to take it out for consultation publicly. The results of that consultation and the final plan will be presented to this committee and then on to Cabinet in September of this year. And apologies at the start, I should have mentioned that on the call, Chair, we have a number of colleagues. I've got Donna Worship, who commissioned the work with the consultants. Should there be any technical questions, I'm sure Donna will be able to answer those. And we also have Katie Greenall, who's joined us recently, who has also got a background in this field and has been working closely with Donna in recent months. So I'm sure if she needs to add any value, she may be able to answer questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanna. Members, questions? Mr. Bolter.
Thank you. Yes, one of the things on here is something very near to all our hearts, I'm quite sure, and that's water leakage. I don't know, but in my area it's Severn Trent. I don't know about anybody else's area. They seem very slow at actually repairing leaks in highways, etc. And I wondered whether this committee's got any powers to call people in to explain their situation, but water leakage is quite a big thing, and I thought that somebody ought to call them in and actually ask what they're doing about water leaks and how they're going to overcome them in a more efficient and time-consuming way. That's the first one. The second one, I was careful how I put this. I was in another place last week when a planning application came before us for a further 650 houses, and the question was asked about how these houses are going to be heated in the future, and all the suggestions put forward were discounted, and the environment consultant from this authority agreed with the builders that they need to think about the carbon footprint of how they're going to heat the homes. And I was very surprised about that. So I thought, you know, opportunity now to introduce heat pumps and other means of heating, rather than just roll over and say, oh, okay, lads, just carry on as you have been doing in previous years. Because 600 houses will take 3 years to build. By that time, the new infrastructure will be in place where you can't install gas boilers. So, you know, I'm surprised that we didn't have a stronger situation from this authority as an environment consultant.
Okay, well, can I just pull that one straight away and say planning applications, and planning, of course, is down to our district and borough council colleagues who are guided by national guidelines in terms of installation and what they need to do for new builds. So really, that's not down to county to comment on in that sense at all.
It's the report.
Not for those particular items, Chairman. Sorry, Bill. No, not in those. Not for those items at all. It's not statutorily down to us at all to do that. Water leaks is another thing, of course, and that's down to the national situation, and really it's your MPs who you would be talking to on those. In terms of road closures, to allow that to happen, we do have a role, and we coordinate that, of course, so that you don't keep digging the same piece of road up every 5 minutes. Although emergencies, of course, outweigh that consideration. I don't know if there's anything else anyone would like to add. Not really. Okay. Okay. So, if I may, Mr. Bolton, Rosita.
Thank you. Yes, welcome strategy. However, I'm always apprehensive because green measures, carbon reduction, it's always very, very costly, which we're passing on to our ratepayers. But I'm sure they are very keen to support the strategy. My question is quite simple. I think we have a strategy, but I always like to think that this is a holistic approach. And looking at Councillor Bolter's comment, you know, it is the building agenda, you know, where a lot of carbon footprint can be saved if a national government would introduce the necessary policies to let local planning authorities be stronger in putting conditions on. But my question is quite simple. How do we, as a county councillor, work with partners and outside bodies to try to achieve a wider input into our strategy? Thank you.
Anne?
I could start, but I'm sure colleagues in the call will want to come in on that. It is a very challenging one, but the authority has been clear in setting up its position in terms of wanting to take a strong role in terms of place leadership. As you say, we have to have a holistic approach to this. There's many sectors impacted who have a role to play in reducing emissions across the county, and by no means is it within our gift to be able to do that. So we have to work in partnership and show that leadership element. First stage is to work with existing partnerships, and then I think there's a whole process there to review what gaps are there, what areas aren't covered with that. Another thing that the authority is keen to do is set up a citizens' assembly to work across other areas, residents, etc., to both engender awareness and then hopefully effect action as well. So I think there's a long way to go, but there is a lot we can do to work in partnership, to show that leadership, to hopefully effect the right type of action. As I say, Chair, some of my colleagues might want to come in with some more detail.
I'm going to bring a leader in at this point.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, this strategy is a very good strategy in my view. I look forward to the consultation and what people say about it. Don't forget, it was a manifesto commitment to be green. We're pledging to plant 700,000 trees. We've now found money to develop our own tree nursery, which is good because then we don't have to go around buying them in. We can grow them ourselves. We've also got wildflower verges we're going to promote, which again promotes diversity. We're working with the city with the electric vehicles. The city was very fortunate in getting a £7 million grant from the government towards their electric buses. They don't just stop at the county boundary, so it's important to work with the city. We've encouraged the pensions and the CAIF to diversify their investments to focus on green initiatives. And of course, one of the big things that will help us be a place leader is if we get the county deal. The county deal will set us up nicely to be a place leader, because although we can do our best as a county council and get close to net zero by 2045, we are a very small player in the great scheme of things. As Anne said earlier on, you've got trucks and buses and M1s and airports and all that sort of stuff. We need to be a place leader to show and encourage them how to get to net zero. We're also part of the UK 100, as you know. We signed up to that, which is upper tier local authorities, again, working together to reduce carbon. So I look forward to the consultation. I'm quite excited about the Citizens' Assembly. I didn't know much about it, but it was Pam who told me all about the Citizens' Assembly, so that'll be useful input. So we want you to contribute when we're out for consultation. That includes you, Bill. Write in with your comments. Obviously, my own members will tell me direct, but we do want to make a meaningful difference. It was a proper senior manifesto commitment, and I think based on the results we achieved, 42 out of 55, people appreciate what we're doing, but we are limited in the resources we've got. That's why the place leadership agenda is so important, that we can encourage, work with them, again, to persuade them that it's not only in the best interests of their bottom line, but it's also in the best interests of what they breathe in. So I think we are well placed to show the example in Leicestershire, and if we can get it right in Leicestershire, we can show it to other counties as well, Chairman. So I'm excited by it.
Very good, thank you. That's absolutely super. Mrs. Hack, there's the line.
Thank you. And actually, as the leader indicated, one of the things that I wanted just to sort of clarify is the drive to net zero is not just about carbon reduction. It's about making sure we are really clear that pulling out emissions from the atmosphere has an overall health benefit too. I think what I really was interested to understand more about is how we will take forward our leadership role. And just if you look at the current scenario we've got, is COVID measures in schools means that the heating's on full blast and all the windows are open. And that kind of energy use, in my view, is just criminal, that we're having to heat the outside air because the classrooms are so cold. It's how can we join those dots together, and how as a leader we can do that in Leicestershire. And I suppose the secondary thing is that this strategy in Leicestershire, we can't do this alone, is how are we going to join up the dots with the districts and the town councils, and how do we use our strategic role in a way that supports our our town councils, who maybe don't have the skills and experience to do what they can, because it's those organisations that will really get down into the nitty-gritty of community.
And
I think I'm not able to, I know I'm not able to give you the detailed answer at the moment. What I can say, however, is we are developing a partnership plan for engagement. So, I think we can all quite easily now identify some key stakeholders at the moment. You've mentioned district authorities, etc. However, there's going to be a whole host, out there that we've not yet thought about that we need to be engaging and encouraging to act. And I think that will come out of the work with the engagement plan we'll be developing.
Nick, do you want to come back?
Well, Amanda's right. It's certainly, we certainly do need to work together, Amanda. Most districts, as far as I'm aware, also declared a climate change emergencies. Most districts, as far as I'm aware, have money in their budgets, and I certainly have aspirations to do what we're doing. We just need to work with them, even the ones that haven't, because if you go out there on the street, whether you're a councillor or not, people do recognise that we do have problems with our climate. So if we're finding areas which aren't keen, we need to get to the people that elect them or work for them and encourage them to join us in this noble task. And it will take dedication, Amanda. This room wasn't built in a day, and dealing with our climate emergency won't be done in 6 months or a year. So it's very positive. I mean, you're a member, I think, of a town council right out in forget where it is now, Braunston. So you're there. I serve on Ashby Town Council. I mean, we all serve on various levels, and we need to take this message to everywhere where we serve, and to the communities, because they will make people change, businesses and other elected bodies.
Thank you, Leader. Much work to do, but it's exciting. Mark.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leader. I kind of just draw our collective attention to the word the Leader used, being aspiration. An awful lot of what I'm seeing here is retrospective reactions, when actually I think we should be slightly kinder on ourselves as a county in terms of some of the innovation that we're doing, as well as the reactions to what would the problems. I think there's some exciting innovation, and I would just like to take this one short moment, Chair, if I may, just to tease people towards the end of the meeting of what's been done in Melton Mowbray, and perhaps I can draw your attention to that a little bit later, about innovations rather than just reactions.
I'm comfortable, if there are no more questions on this, to let you do it whilst you have the microphone. No further questions. Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leader. Colleagues, I know we react to issues, and climate change is a political hot potato, and so it should be. I can't think of many things more pressing than the damage we're doing to our own planet, but I suppose my sort of theme really here is being kind to ourselves in 2022. These issues aren't being ignored. There are and some amazing projects going forward, and thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity. Just want to talk about two things briefly, as I may. I hope this is the right junction. I've been working with a local college who is offering, first of all, I'm talking about pragmatic, proactive, actual things that we do. Local college has actually is offering a free of charge qualification to anybody either in employment or not, which is a level 2 in understanding climate change. It's certainly in my team. I'm offering it to all of my team because I think we should all be environmentally aware. The reason why I talk about the SMB group, more commonly known as Brooksby College as it used to be, is for every completer they are going to, who completes the level 2 climate change course, they're going to plant a tree in their name or their memory. So that's a nice positive thing. Across the road from where I work in Melton Mowbray, there is an organisation that some of you may be aware of called PERA, which was once the Production Engineering Research Association. Their modelling, their delivery has changed over the years. However, I've been working with two gentlemen, one of which is called Mr. Andrew Jones, around a paint recycling project, which is innovative. It's a project that I believe Australia and China have been desperately trying to get the lead on, and I'm pleased to say that we have made traction in Leicestershire with this. Here's a document, and that I'd like to pass on to you at the end of this meeting. We spend a disproportionate amount of money trying to dispose of paint. It's a really big issue. I know it's not perhaps seen as atmospheric as we've spoken about and essentially to do with climate, but it does cause considerable damage. Mr. Bolter, you mentioned about retaining the quality of the water table. A lot of paint gets wrapped in a blanket, put in a bin bag, and then actually ultimately ends up in our water. These gentlemen have actually pioneered something that will reverse or backwards engineer, as it's called, paint, so it actually can be recycled and reproduced. And I suppose I'd just like to take this moment and this committee, if I may, to actually, I think it's important that we actually celebrate our successes as well as berate our failings, Chair, if that's okay, and hopefully this will go out to broader distribution.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to let that wing its way to Joanna in the long run, for she can, as our paint guru, as I shall now call her, she can certainly work miracles, I think, with that one. So she'll.
I didn't even know we had a paint guru. That's
there you go. You see, she's newly promoted only this minute. So
that's top secret, Chair.
Sorry, Joanna. Okay, well, but it's coming your way. So that's that. And of course, Mark, you've also mentioned trees as central to you. We at County Hall have gone live on the 13th of December with our tree monitoring and what should I say, web pages, which allow you, as we come to plant trees, to fill in a form. It's an interactive page, and it will allow us to plot where and how we're dealing with the 700,000 trees. So, I mean, that's in our manifesto. That's what we're getting on with, and that's what we've done. So there you go, 2 practical examples of how we're moving this agenda forward in a very egalitarian and hopefully involving way, which is how we need to do this. Okay.
Yes, Chairman, not to prolong it, but could we have possibly a link to this map circulated? So, and then the other thing is, could we just ask Mark, what is this this recycling doing? Are they extracting some components out of the paint, you know, or where does that go to? If we could just, for the record and for my own information, it would be really nice to know.
Okay, Mrs. Page, it is reusing, and it is reusable with regards to the paint, and I'm sure Joanna will have a look at putting a link out to us at some point. And the link for the trees went out to all members on the 13th of December, so you should find it in your inbox and be able to do that. If not, back to 13th of December. It came out to me on the 13th of December. I have it here. So there we are. Leader?
Just one thing which I wanted to highlight whilst I'm here. I mean, as you know, I'm here because Blake's on honeymoon, so Blake does this job normally. It is ash dieback, which is incredibly serious and incredibly expensive. I was just going to ask Anne, while she's here, if she can just mention ash dieback. People think it's not many trees, but it is a hell of a lot, and that's why we need to encourage and that map thing to get people to replace them. And can you just say something about ash dieback? Not only it's loss of trees, some of them are ours, so they're expensive. Some of them are in verges, so they're expensive. And some of them, the owners don't deal with them, so they're expensive. So, Anne, can you just say something on ash dieback?
I certainly will. Thank you, Leader. And Joe might want to come in with a wee bit more, but we estimate we could lose up to 90% of the ash stock across the county, and it is one of the prevalent stocks in Leicestershire. So we will see quite a different environment, landscape out there over time as, these trees do begin to go. As the leader said, there's a lot within our ownership. I think even on the highway boundaries, it's something like 140,000 trees we estimate are on the highway verges. So that doesn't count those on our estate, i.e., schools, etc., or those in private ownership. So we're talking about substantial numbers. And I guess the key for us at the moment, while we're monitoring and we do annual surveys across a percentage of our tree stock, while we're monitoring that, there's a lot of work to try and encourage private landowners to take notice and be aware of the condition of their trees. And there are some, there's lots of guidance about what to look out for, because I think one of the dangers of this disease is the way it affects the tree. The branches, the limbs become brittle and fall. So it's not a case of the whole tree will go over, its branches can fall at times. So it really is about trying to take the preventative treatment, i.e. that might be taking the tree out at the right time before there's a risk, to safety, etc. So there's a lot of work going on both internally for us monitoring our own stock and taking the appropriate action, which, one is costly, but two, as the leader has said, we need to then think about the coming out of that and what we're actually planting in replacement to that, but also then, as I say, raising awareness across the communities that other landowners, be it district authorities, be it farmers, be it private landowners, are taking the appropriate action for their ash. I'll just stop there. I don't know whether Joe wants to add anything particular.
Joe, if you do.
Chair, I think Anne covered it extensively. I think we estimate, the only thing I'll add is I think we're talking upwards of 500,000 ash trees. It's a native species, so the point about it will change the landscape, and why it's, I think, such an important factor that we've got this commitment to plant 700,000 trees. We will be affected by ash dieback on a landscape visual impact. I think the only other thing I'll add is that we worked with the National Tree Council. We were the first upper tier authority to produce an ash dieback action plan, and we take a risk-based approach. So the authority has sort of monetarised the financial risk of ash dieback. And whilst all trees are not really created equal, you know, a tree that falls in a field without, you know, any risk to life has a biodiversity value to be left in situ, whereas something adjacent to a road or an embankment on a major A road is something entirely different, or on a school site. So we work across forestry and highways where it's adjacent to the road network to have that risk-based approach to managing ash dieback as it sort of beds in and continues to establish itself. It's thoroughly here. It's right across the county at the moment. So we're managing that probably, if I were a guessing person, certainly over the next decade. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joanne. Mark, final comment.
Just very quickly, the ash dieback discussion has been going on for a long time. I can't imagine that we've just discovered that 900,000 trees, whatever, is just going to be wiped off the face of the planet. Is there projects, educational projects? Is there initiatives? Is there anything? Is there anything in public awareness? Because outside the parameters of these four walls, I don't think people are aware of the dire circumstances that these are in. Have we actually got anything in the public domain? Are we working with schools? And can I apologise to this group if they have, but I'm not aware of it myself. Thank you.
It was a final comment, but you'd like just to mention, Anne, the fact that what we've done, again, quickly, just in 2 sentences, if you wouldn't mind.
We do as much as we can to try and get the message out there, because it's key primarily. What people know about this, but primarily from the land ownership point of view and responsibility, we do that. And you're absolutely right, it's been going for years. Prior to this, I worked with, you know, authority down south, and they had been, you know, because it came over from Europe, they were affected, I think, before we were, and building that noise. So you're right, it's been around for a number of years. It shouldn't really be new to people, but as ever, you know, it's hard to get all the information out there, but we're doing what we can.
And certainly be assured that we are moving on that quite clearly. Any further questions on agenda item 10, members? Right, then moving on to agenda item 11, Anne, you're going to take us through this, and it's the greenhouse gas emissions report for 2020 to 2021.
Thank you. Yes, this report sets out our progress in reducing the council's own emissions, so that's from our own operations, against the target for net zero by 2030 on our own operations. In measuring these emissions, we do follow the government's environmental reporting guidelines. So, you know, we are working to kind of national framework on this. And as the chair has just said, this report covers performance to 2021 financial year. Overall, if we look from the 2008 to 09 baseline and what we've achieved to this last financial year, we've achieved a 73.6% reduction in emissions, which takes us down to 9,400 tonnes and is ahead of our target, you know, our trajectory target for the year. If we look at just the annual progress from the previous year, from 2019-20, we saw a 19.4% drop in emissions. And while it's significant, we've got to take into account that COVID has impacted in that in terms of how we've operated. So, you know, again, it's just a slightly different factor we need to take into account with these figures this time round. The most significant reductions have been across business travel, street lighting and our traffic signals, estate, building electricity and our fleet vehicles. COVID, as the continued decarbonisation of the national grid, have been the main drivers of those reductions. Areas that haven't seen reductions, however, are buildings gas. That went up 2.5% on the previous year, and fugitive emissions. Buildings gas emissions increases have largely been due to the fact that we've had to ventilate the buildings as well as heat them because of COVID requirements. And fugitive gas, that saw an increase of 265% on the previous year. However, I am told, I'm not an expert in this, but I am told annual variations usually are significant, and they result from maintenance activities. So despite that sizable increase in that, however, we're still below the average for the last 11-year period. So it's still a positive picture despite that spike in this year. Emissions can be complex picture. For example, our fleet emissions dropped by just over 15%, and that was despite having to use more vehicles because of COVID. You know, we couldn't send 2 people out in the one vehicle, and so across some of our operations. And, you know, therefore more diesel used. That was then offset, however, by a reduction in gas oil emissions and less resurfacing work. Some activities we couldn't do. We didn't do surface dressing in the first year of COVID because we couldn't do it safely with social distancing. So that, you know, created savings there. Electricity consumption emissions went down 25%, which is really, really positive, due to more home working, as well as that decarbonisation of the grid. And that also accounts for reductions across our street lighting and traffic signals. Business travel, 57% reduction, which you'd expect, given, you know, most of our office-based workers were at home, and, you know, also brought financial savings for the authority. Similar position for water and waste, again, you know, from the council's operation, because we were operating in a very different way. Our solar panels have enabled us to export just over 120,000 kilowatt hours of electricity to the grid, which is really positive. And 14% of our energy is from on-site renewables. Again, a really positive picture there. I'm sure the committee will agree that we've been making really good progress across emissions on our own operations. However, I think the biggest challenge I would just put out there is in the coming year to try and retain some of those reductions that have been driven by COVID, so that we don't go back up to where we were before. Some things will be unavoidable, but there are other things that will be an opportunity to really build on and try and lock that in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Amanda.
Thank you. Just a really quick one. It indicated in the report that it excludes schools. So do we have something separately for our locally maintained schools, or the sites where we have academies and we still have buildings on those academies that are in our control? How are they managed? I'd just be really interested, please.
Anne.
I think my colleague Michael is on the call, and he may be able to give the detail on that. I'm hoping he's on the call.
Donna is on the call. Go ahead, Donna.
I am, yeah. Hi, thanks, Anne. Yeah, I'm on the call to cover the GHG report. Yeah, so in terms of schools, we don't currently report on schools. There are initiatives that are run from corporate resources to support schools in their energy management and their carbon reduction. We don't have the data to report on schools in detail, but we do, wherever we can, support schools in their kind of energy efficiency and carbon reduction activities.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, my question.
Amanda, your question.
Sorry,
yeah, okay.
My question was about locally maintained schools, which are still within our responsibility, not necessarily schools in general. So Ravenhurst School in my division is a county-led school. So what is our responsibility over those sites? And also Winstanley School in my division, whilst the school is an academy, it has a Sure Start building within its grounds. So what is our responsibility over those buildings, please?
Okay, Donna, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, in terms of the reporting on the greenhouse gas emissions, there are some areas that we exclude from our reporting because we don't have the energy data which we require to produce the greenhouse gas data, and that would include schools where they procure their own energy, Sure Start centres, etc., where they may be funded by the county council to pay the energy bills, would be included in the report, but any school energy procurement would be excluded where we don't have the energy data.
It looks like that's the best we can do in terms of diving into that one at the moment, Mrs. Hack.
I suppose my challenge then would be is those schools that are in our control and those assets are our assets, at what point will we have that data? Or at what point will we be changing the systems to ensure we can measure that in the future?
I think that's a reasonable challenge. Could we ask you take that away and give it some consideration and see where it will fit? Anne?
We can certainly take it away and give it consideration. I think, as you've got from the answer, it's a complex picture, isn't it? In terms of the mix of what could even be on a site, never mind where they procure their energy, whether it's through us and we've got that information at our fingertips, or whether it's they've done it separately or through some other mechanism, Academy Trust for those non-LA maintained schools. We can certainly have a think about it. What I would say in the meantime, however, is obviously year on year we're reporting on the same things, so it does give us a position of how well we're doing. We're consistent in that reporting. Not to say, and sorry, I did say at the outset, we follow government guidance on this, and within that guidance some things are excluded. So while we have a picture of our emissions, that's what's initially been agreed to be in scope for our reporting. There will be some things that are still out with this that are linked some way to our own council operations that we don't have to report on at the moment. So I think that probably those elements need to come into the same kind of category we're talking about here, looking at how we might want to bring them into the picture. Although we've got a consistent year-on-year reporting that gives us that trajectory over time, we get it's not the full picture because either we're challenged with the data, government isn't requiring us to do it, or some other factor there. Sorry, that was a long way of saying we'll take it away and we'll have a look at it and think about it.
Leader.
Certainly Amanda has a point. I mean, under our place leadership role, which we talked about earlier, whether or not we're actually going to measure them or not, whether we can get the data from them or not is by the by. But certainly under our place leadership aspirations, we should be working with them and we should try and include them somewhere, because after all, as Amanda says, these are still technically at our schools. They've got board of governors and that, but we certainly should be working with them. Whether or not, as I say, the data can be included in these sort of figures, I honestly don't know. I'll have to defer to someone who does know. But on the place leadership basis, certainly we should be working with our schools. I mean, it's good practice if you can work with your own schools. That's good, but it also encourages the children. And they're the ones who this is going to affect more than, say, the likes of me and some of us older people in the room, and they drive the parents. So teach a kid something at school, he doesn't forget about it, he takes it home and tells mum and dad this is what they should be doing. So place leadership, yes, but whether or not the data can be included, you'll have to wait and see what Anne comes back on.
You're comfortable with that now, Mrs. Hack? As comfortable as we can be?
I suppose the key question is, once we understand this report is saying we're just measuring X against X, and that's really important for consistency. On the previous report, we talked about net zero and our drive to net zero, and at the moment it feels like there's a bit of a data gap on our estate, which includes our locally maintained schools or other provisions that within school grounds. So it's just, how do we meet that? I appreciate this report might not be the right report, but it feels to me like a bit of a gap that maybe we could close.
Thanks. Yeah, just one further point I would make on that. Depending on the way it's procured, for instance, by an external body, a trust, etc., an academy, if it's procured there, it would come under our Scope 3 emissions. So it's not our own emissions, so it would be accounted in that. I think where the gap potentially would be is those LA maintained schools. So we'll certainly take that away and have a look at that.
Okay. Mr. Bolter.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Bolter, I do apologise. Donna, did you need to come back on anything else at all, just to help?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think Anne's just covered it really. We've just completed a study of our Scope 3 emissions, which are the broader emissions of our leased estate and some of the estate that are outside of what we currently report on. So in terms of reviewing the scope of the greenhouse gas report, that is something that we've bring back recommendations possibly for further inclusions, and that could cover the queries that have just been raised.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bolter, for your forbearance. Mr. Bolter.
That's right. Thank you. Yes, one of the most difficult things to get rid of is car tyres. I see in the report we've got down here we used 5,000 car tyres for road surfacing. Is this something we're going to explore in the future, to actually use some of these tyres up rather than set them to landfill, which causes other pollution problems further down the line? And if so, is it as good as what we've been doing? Is it quieter? Does it last as long, or what's the criteria for it?
Mr. Bolter, the jury was out when I was lead member there and authorised 3 bypasses to be parallel filled with this stuff, and it is exciting. Let's hear what the results are, shall we? Because we're certainly leading again at Leicestershire County Council here. Go ahead.
Unfortunately, it's not as quick as getting results like that. You can only tell over time, you know, the longevity, etc. We did our research first, and you know, the whole thing stacked up in terms of whole life costs and the benefits of that. However, the proof is in the pudding, so unfortunately it will be over time. We can see that. We are looking, or we will look when we do major reconstruction like that again, to use that type of or other, you know, innovative low carbon technologies as well, to use them where we can. At the moment, we don't do that many major reconstructions. That was funded through challenge funding from government, but other opportunities we will look at similar type things. But overall, at the moment, all functioning well, but it's still early days, because you'd expect to, you know, have at least decade or more lifespan out of infrastructure like that.
Okay, Nick.
Sorry. I'm just fascinated by what Mr. Bolter said. Could you elaborate? So we're actually using recycling car tyres to make road surfacing materials. Is that correct? Did I write that down wrong? Well, surely we should be doing more of that, because there's car tyres in every gateway of every country lane that I've driven coming over. I mean, can we prioritise? Is there any way we can accelerate and prioritise these type of initiatives?
I'll absolutely answer that. And until the jury's out, we can't risk county council monies if it's a failed project. But certainly we're on the project, we're doing the project, and the minute we get results, you will certainly know if we do that. We're ready to move on that. It's exciting. It's great. But you've got there are lots of parameters that we had to take into account, which we did. But again, as Anne says, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It's as simple as that. Okay. Sorry, having called Nick before, and I meant Mark now, Nick would like to come in. Nick?
Thank you, Chair. Am I mistaken, but also do they not use tyres for play areas and things now, what they chop up and use instead of soft play areas? Is that correct? Is that something we do at the council areas we have and encourage our schools and other places to do?
It's district, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, that we don't deal with, you know, play parks or play material, but I understand you're correct. They use recycled materials like that, and an awful lot of new infrastructure. You know, it's available, fairly widespread, I think, but not something that certainly comes under our remit to do.
Sorry, Chair, I've noticed it's particularly prevalent in equine arenas. Manages use them, because I've just been to Brooksby and seen car tyres being used and that. Don't know how many people have horses, but...
Okay, Leader?
Again, under our place leading initiative, this is the sort of thing that if we understand it and Anne understands it, little parish councils who provide these things may well not. So if we get a county deal and we are empowered to help with the place, this is the sort of thing that we should be able to do. We can't mandate it, we can't compel them, but we can certainly point them in the right direction and show them the benefits, not only to them, but to the people that vote for them, that this is an innovative way of dealing with stuff that would otherwise be buried. In my view, anyway.
Thank you, Leader. All right. Any further questions, comments? Thank you, members. Well, thank you, Anne. We can now move on then to agenda item 12, which is the final substantive item. It's the Environment Performance Report, most important, 2020 to 2021. This is the red, amber, green, members, rated in your documentation from pages 67 to 84. And Anne, you're going to take us. Oh, it's Joe. I apologise. You're going to take us through this. There you go, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. It wouldn't be E&T if we didn't have something that was traffic lights effectively and rag rated. So I'll come on to that. So through you, Chair, really the report covers the 2020-21 environmental performance. Firstly, in terms of progress in delivering the targets in the Council's environment strategy, so broader than just the greenhouse gas report, but there will be some crossover, so I'll try and avoid some of that or acknowledge it, as well as the performance of the Council's environmental management system, which we use to manage that environment strategy. I was only proposing to highlight some of the key messages, but as always, at the end, happy to take any questions. As you, Chair, have mentioned, there's a summary dashboard at Appendix A and has a sort of RAG rating, so I'll come on to it and pick some highlights, but there are 9 green performing targets, 1 amber and 6 red. In terms of the background to the report, it does explain how we follow what's called ISO 14001 standards for our environmental management system. It acknowledges that we've had in our recent audits no non-conformities of that management system. And I think the report reflects a bit of an exceptional year for that 2021 period. Obviously, in terms of the pandemic, I think I'd just caution that it makes it challenging in terms of reflecting on any trend analysis. We're not 100% sure if this will be replicated going forward, and it has generated a mixture of positive and negative impacts on the Council. If I just pick a few then, in terms of the measures that are behind target, Anne and Councillor Hack mentioned this, but in terms of gas consumption in LCC buildings, it has increased slightly, so it is just above target, and we do believe that is linked to that need to both heat and ventilate buildings during COVID. In terms of CO2 emissions from road transport, challenging in terms of our ability to affect a real change, but certainly links to our wider net zero carbon ambitions for road transport. And it uses data provided by BASE, which is 2 years in arrears, so it's from 2019. And whilst there was a small decrease of around 0.3%, which will be linked to increasing vehicle efficiencies, the vehicles on the road, and increased take-up of electric vehicles, we were still 8.7% above that net zero target that we've set ourselves. I think in terms of what we do with that going forward, as we move forward in producing the local transport plan for LTP4, hopefully that will identify opportunities and action areas for us to take forward. If I pick another, the percentage of household waste reused, recycled or composted, that's very much stubbornly stuck at just above 43%, which is below the 50% national target. And previous iterations of the committee that preceded this one, or for E&T, has had numerous reports on the state of that target. And there are a number of reasons for it being below target. National issues, economic factors, the pandemic will have contributed. I mentioned the uplift in the amount of waste in people's homes, and other factors like lightweighting. You know, people are reading news online and cans are thinner and lighter. So actually you can be recycling the same, but in weight terms, it weighs less. Just worth adding at that point on that target, the waste partnership. So this 50% target was for 2020. We have a waste partnership with ourselves and the district councils, and we're in the process of having redrafted and reviewed the Leicestershire Municipal Waste Management Strategy. So that will look to incorporate new government targets set out in the circular economy package. So things like 65% recycling of municipal waste by 2035. And that is actually about to go out for public consultation, that draft document. We think it will get launched next week, and there are plans to come and seek views from this committee at its meeting in March. So we'll bring a report on that to seek your views, which will be really valuable in taking that forward. The only other one I'll mention is environmental risks, scoring more than 15. The ambition is always to have none. And at the time of writing the report, we had 5. I can update you that we're actually now down to 3 risks that remain, which is a really low number, and a link to some work that we've done on drainage works at 2 of the recycling household waste sites. If I move on to measures that are ahead of target, electricity consumption in LCC buildings, where arguably on that indicator low is good, we're ahead of target. And then I'll just highlight a sort of small batch. Total waste from LCC sites, a 63% drop, significantly ahead of target. Office paper purchased, 85% reduction. And water consumption significantly down. Again, they're just a batch of examples which are linked to work from home, having gone through a pandemic, so we're not experiencing the levels of usage, and therefore that's seeing real benefits in terms of the targets. And I think Anne mentioned it earlier, the challenge for the organisation and for offices is to prevent that bounce back effect as circumstances change going forward, and see if we can sustain some of those really positive indicated changes. And I think I mentioned we've had no enforcements or prosecutions in 2021. The report then does contain information on targets that are not performance rated. It looks at environmental complaints in any areas where there was incomplete data. I won't go through those that are in the report if anybody wants to pick anything out. But examples of where we've had incomplete data just due to transitioning to two different data systems was around business mileage claims. So there's a delay in securing that data, but we actually anticipate that indicator to be green. Similar reasons as some of the others I mentioned earlier. Very quickly on the environmental management system, the environment strategy has been updated to reflect the carbon net zero ambitions. There's work ongoing linked to new biodiversity KPIs, which we hope we will have established by March of this year. So going forward, they'll be included in this report and we'll report on those. The report covers the significant changes in environmental legislation in 2020-21 and links to the fact that some key things are things like the European Withdrawal Act post-Brexit, so where we've had to set up our various bits of legislation environmentally. And we now have a system where we can access that environment legislation register to react to changes more fully. And I think that'll be really important when we take account of this coming year, the very recently introduced Environment Act and all its impacts and opportunities on the work that we do environmentally. Lastly, environmental risks and opportunities. There's a section on the report, and again, questions welcome, but I was proposing not to go into that this afternoon in any detail because we've been asked and committed to come back to the committee in March with a really extensive report on our climate change risk register and adaptation. So there's a full report coming to you at the March meeting. And with that, I will pause. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Nick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of, about three questions. Obviously, one, the electric is down because the building's not being used, but then gas is up and the building's not being used. I know you say this is because we've got to ventilate and everything else, but surely if rooms aren't being used, you have no need to ventilate, no need to use gas, heater can be turned down, reduce the gas. And my third point is it possible to be able to see the last one so we can compare this to the previous one? Because I've got nothing to compare it against because I wasn't sat here last year to look at it. Is that possible to go forward, please?
I'm going to look at the last one first and say this is, of course, the first time this has come to this committee, and there is no wonder you didn't have one last time. I would think it would be not too meaningful either because we're still in the grips of COVID and we really don't have a full picture of how this will settle down going forward. But I'm going to let Anne or Jan just comment on those figures for you, Nick.
Well, I'll start. Maybe Joe wants to come in as well. In terms of the buildings, the point you made about buildings, I think it was more about some of the smaller buildings perhaps weren't opened, in which case we could make the savings there. But for the majority, like County Hall, although there was very, very few people there, they were still being heated, etc., and then had to have the ventilation. So I think it's more about the savings being driven by the smaller buildings where we could close because there weren't any people going into. Most of ours, for instance, in terms of environment transport, we have depots, etc. Because the frontline workers were out there, all those still functioned, but we still had to ventilate them. So I don't think there was, and often with the system, you can't just shut off, this office or this room and have another one on, in terms of these centralised systems. So I think it's within the complexities of that.
You're comfortable, okay. Mr. Bolton.
Thank you. Yes. One or two things. I'll go from the bottom and work my way up if I may. Page 80, item 87. Red indicators increased from 3 to 6. Interested in that one. Also, changes to the countryside stewardship scheme. What are they? And how's that going to be applied? How do you apply for that? And you mentioned that some areas don't meet legal requirements, so we'll all that for the moment. But recycling rates do concern me, because when we had to change to case pack, the items we could actually recycle, collect to go to recycling, reduced. Before we could collect clothing and do, when we moved to case pack we couldn't. So the amount of weight going to recycling automatically reduced. I think that's some of the reason why our recycling rate's gone down, because the sheer amount of weight is not there now. So also glass is collected separately, which is not now, it's included. So I don't know whether Joanne's going to jump on me for that one.
Just as Mr. Bolter, just as a preface to that, do bear in mind that the districts and boroughs collect on our behalf, and they will have different contracts maybe, but let's just see what...
Chair, all districts have got the same apart from one, North West Leicester.
Okay. As my own district is not included in that, I'll be quite happy with that. And we, of course, are washing our face with that and are quite good. Okay, Joanne, if you'd like to pick that up.
Apologies, Chair. Technology not allowing me to get all the way to the end of the meeting. I didn't fully hear Councillor Bolter's question in relation to the recycling element of that. I mean, he and I are well versed, as are all, on the management of recycling and the direction that the districts have to use the case pack facility. I just wasn't 100% sure what the question was. I apologise. I cut out temporarily.
Would you like to repeat your question specifically on that, please, Mr. Bolter?
When we moved to case pack, we were informed what we could collect and send to case pack. One of the things we couldn't send anymore was clothing and shoes, and that's one of the biggest weights that had in recycling. So, and also we collected glass separately, and that has to be included. So I just wonder what effect that had on the recycling rate.
Thank you, Chair. To be honest, I would rather than guess at the amount of impact it's had, I would have to check in terms of the statistics. But I will take that away and have a look at what information we've got in terms of what, if any, impact curbside collection of textiles has had on weight, as it were. Though there are other outlets for those recyclers.
Okay, Mr. Bolter. Right, so we're now looking at your countryside scheme, and then you wanted another comment on the RAG 3 to 6 reds, I gather, on the final. Okay, I'll let Anne pick up the first one, the 3 to 6 RAG again.
Sorry, I was just going to go the other way around, if that's all right, Chief.
Please do, whichever.
I didn't hear Mr. Bolter's first point as to which paragraph it was on, so I haven't actually looked at that yet. In terms of the countryside stewardship scheme, in the absence of a colleague from Corporate Resources on the call, I'll take that away and get the information on those changes, and that's something that falls under the remit there. And apologies, you wanted some detail on the RAG. Yeah, as per the earlier table.
Yeah, that Mr. Bolter is what we've just been through to explain why it's moved from 3 to 6.
Chair, if I may, it just links to hopefully the report, but I think it's the earlier point. How do you perhaps compare and contrast previous years performance, 3 to 6 or any other sort of shifts in terms of those RAG rated performances. I can through CAT make sure that the link and where on the website it is, but for the last couple of years, officers on my side have been putting together the best description I can give is an infographic. It's sort of a 3 or 4 page summary that is far easier and more sort of palatable to read, but it is the annual environmental performance report, and it picks out some of the innovations, the performance, the shifts in performance, and that is on the website. So previous versions and this one will have the same applied. So certainly we can do that. And sorry, whilst I know I've still got to have a look at any weight impacts for Councillor Bolter on textiles, just to be really clear that with a direction notice that we issued for Case Pack directing the districts to use that facility excluded textiles. The districts can still choose to collect textiles should they wish. They've always had that dispensation. Thank you.
Okay. With that, Mr. Bolter, I'm clear that districts do have that flexibility, which was a riposte I was going to come back to, and I didn't want to do it, but the office has clarified that for us, and
Well,
that's
not,
quite.
Chad, because Case Pack will not accept commingled clothing with the recycling.
I'm sure then that it's within the district or borough's ability to go elsewhere. I think that's the point. Okay, Leader.
Briefly, Chairman. So obviously, I'm disappointed that the environment performance report isn't as good as it was, obviously, and we're enthusiastic as an administration to make it better. So I recognise that we've done some good things: electricity consumption, less paper, less print, less water, better staff engagement. But I'm very disappointed particularly on the recycling from Leicestershire County Council sites, for instance, where we're in control. I know we do well in those because I use the one at Lount and it's 60-70%. I'm disappointed it's lower. I'm aspirational, to say the least, that we should be generating more renewable electricity, and as you can see, that is not so good. So I will take away from this. I want officers to be more enthusiastic in trying to achieve these targets. Having said that, I do recognise it has been a particularly difficult 18 months, but that doesn't detract from the aspiration. And I want officers to be more enthusiastic about this. Some are, but some aren't, if I'm honest. This is a key manifesto commitment, and the environmental performance report forms part of that manifesto commitment. And I will take the comments of members away and speak to the chief about it.
Okay, Anne.
Thank you. If I may just come back on one point to give the leader a wee bit more reassurance. The percentage recycled from LCC sites means LCC offices and depots, etc., not the RHWS. They are actually part of the public coming into. And the reason that has gone down and is shown as red and as one of those 3 that Mr. Bolter picked up is worsening is because the very fact that staff haven't actually been in the offices, there's been less waste, but that proportion of waste is different. There hasn't been food waste collection because there hasn't been anybody here to take it out, and there's been very few people to create that. So your proportionate of residual waste, i.e. your black bin waste, as opposed to your recycle it waste, is completely changed because of the pandemic. So I would very much want to, just clarify on that one. It's really been a factor of the pandemic there, and not actually overall worsening position. We've had much less waste overall, which is a really positive thing, but because the way we've operated, because people haven't been here, your recyclates has gone down in that. Equally, we've used much less paper, so much less paper is recycled. The whole waste makeup has changed, which reflects that, but very much I would suspect a temporary factor there. So I just want to reassure on that. Thank you.
Leader.
Noted. Thank you very much.
Rosita, your final comment?
Thank you. And correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but percentage recycled from LCC sites and percentage of household waste reused and recycled and composted. Now, I thought that these indicators were only red because due to not having lorry drivers, etc., and pandemic issues and illness, there was a backlog of stuff on the sites, because I know that's what happened to us. So, you know, there was a backlog, so it hadn't been able to be recycled and shifted. So I thought, when I was looking at this, that made the indicators red, and then at the next you know, when we're seeing these indicators, they would change. So is that the reason, or am I wrong?
Okay, Anne.
I would hate to say you were wrong, Mrs. Page, but on the percentage recycled from LCC sites, no, that's not the case. That was just, you know, as I clarified in my previous response. On the percentage household waste reused, recycled and composted, because that is what goes through the RHWS and through the district collection, etc. We just have an element of that at times. However, this is, you know, data for a whole year, and that will not have been, the factor that has driven that into red. It's just changing volumes, changing proportions through the pandemic that is driven that. And we equally, we've always been at a point on that particular one, not always, sorry, for the last few years, we've been at a point in that one where we have kind of plateaued and come down slightly. You know, the target's 50%, but we've just been under that and it's gone down slightly. So there's and we are working closely with our district colleagues about driving up the levels of recycling, etc. And that's an ongoing effort, both ourselves and with district partners on that. So I genuinely don't think the reasons you were saying has been the drivers of the performance in this instance.
So it's an overall backwards data of the previous year?
Yes, we're looking at that.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Mrs. Hack, I did miss you out. Amanda, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It's on the same item, so we're on good grounds there. I think what would be really useful for us to understand is I get the sense that recycling overall from the home has plateaued a little bit. And it'd be really interesting if at a future meeting, Chair, if we may just understand where we've seen that plateau and whether or not there are any patterns. I'd be interested, for example, to see whether or not composted waste may well have started to reduce because district councils are increasing their charges year on year to collect that green waste, and I didn't know that was having a factor. I suppose the other element is those individuals that are happy to recycle are still recycling, and it's the stubborn elements of what's left of people not willing to recycle, don't have the space to have 300 bins, those kinds. What are the challenges to start moving us over the line? However, later on in the report, and I just wanted to clarify my understanding, it identified that actually overall though waste did fall by 7%. Is that in the same time period? Is that my understanding is correct? Is overall waste has reduced, but the difference between recyclable and non-recyclables was actually not moving much. And the second thing that I just wanted to identify is about the overall emissions on Leicestershire Road network being 8.7 above the net zero target. And now I realise that's all road journeys, not just ones in our control. And whilst we have little influence over that, actually what can we do? What are we doing? Because that is about the health of Leicestershire. The more emissions we have from vehicles, the worse it is for us. What are we doing to try and mitigate that through the road infrastructure, reducing congestion, those kinds of things? Thank you.
Anne, if you'd like to start this, Joanne may pick something up out of this, I'm sure, but go ahead.
there was certainly a number of points here. I'll do my best, and you know, I'll ask Joe to come in as well if that's all right. In terms of the maybe a review of what's happening with recycling, and you know, mentioned a whole host of things, composting bins and impact, etc. I mean, if it's all right, what I would suggest is, you know, you're aware the government came out with its resources and waste strategy a couple of years now anyway, but through that there's a number of initiatives coming forward. Things like food waste, things like extended producer responsibility, which I mentioned earlier, and is putting the onus on the manufacturer or of the packaging to ensure that a certain percentage, and I think it's 65%, but don't quote me on that, is recyclable. That will change the whole dynamics of the market in terms of how much is recyclable and is easy to, because I think we've all had conversations before, or I'm sure you find as individuals as well, it can be very confusing for people what can go in a recycling bin and what can't. Differs from areas, there's different labelling, you know, you can't recycle black plastic, but you can see through, you know, it gets complex for people, it's really difficult to do. What the government's resources and waste strategy is about, or part of it is about, is trying to make that simpler across the board. We've done a lot at the local level, we've worked with the district authorities to have consistent messaging across the whole county, so you know, each district saying the same thing across the county, etc. But there's a long way to go. But I suggest, and we're, you know, expecting movement on some of those big initiatives from the government this year, that as part of those papers and what's coming along, we include that kind of review of where we are as Leicestershire and what that might mean for us, some of the challenges we have and what that government initiative might mean for us. So I think that would give a bigger picture for the committee, if that's all right. I'm going to duck out of the 7% reduction overall and ask Joe to pick that one up if it's okay. In terms of road traffic reduction, massive challenge for us, as you say. You know, we have little control. We have influence, but we do not have direct control. Okay, things that we've been doing across the board are we've got a bus service improvement plan. Now that will depend on drawing down the funding from government, and we're hoping for indicative allocations from government by the end of February. But there's musings, or various quarters suspect that some areas may get a real focus of that money, i.e. the cities, etc., and it may be less or nothing to some other areas, which we hope doesn't come to fruition, because our ability to put into place that bus services improvement plan, if the funding doesn't come from government, is extremely limited. And we all want to see improvements across the bus network for the county. We have recently adopted over the last year a cycling and walking strategy, and we're following that up with development, and we're out to consultation at the moment on 2 local cycling and walking infrastructure plans covering the Loughborough Sheffield area and the areas to the south and east of the city, you know, the county areas to the south and east of the city, and that will be the detailed plans of all cycling and walking infrastructure for those areas, and that's the start of obviously, you know, spreading that around the county. On a wider point, however, we will be producing a new local transport plan, LTP4, during this year and towards the back end of the year. And that very much has to take on board the government's, the Department for Transport's decarbonisation transport plan, decarbonising transport plan, if you can see it this time of the day. And so through that, we'll be looking to strengthen, you know, what we're doing for EVs, what we're doing for, you know, cycling and walking, how are we really going to get that mode shift, and how are we supporting that conversion to, you know, reduced carbon fuels or zero carbon vehicles, etc. And so there's a host of things. It is about influencing and encouraging people to do that. So again, you know, lack of that direct control, and, you know, setting the right environment to get the right type of behaviours. We'll also have to work closely with the likes of National Highways, because as you know, we've got major strategic networks through our and long distance traffic through our county, which causes some of the key air quality management areas to be designated, and it comes from the strategic road network. And you know, so it's wider than just us as a local road network. So a lot of work to do. Okay.
Okay, and thank you, Joe. That was pretty comprehensive. Is there anything else you would like to quickly add as time draws to a close?
I'm sure we could wax lyrical about the ebb and flow of waste, so I won't bore you all with that. Other than, I think Councillor Hackey did ask about, was it point 43 in the report, and is it correct that household waste overall fell by 7%? And the short answer to that is yes. Very, very strange year that we're reporting on linked to that pandemic. But if I just were to offer up some suggestions that people bear in mind, we had to close all 14 recycling household waste sites when we went into the very first pandemic for a few months. So there was absolutely no waste going through them whatsoever. The districts stopped their bulky waste collections for a really lengthy period of time. Some had to stop their green waste collections. So it was a period where there were swathes, gaps in service provision, and that translates into tonnage. And I'll kind of sum up at that point. But yes, the information is correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Right. As there are no further questions, then agenda item 13 is the date of the next meeting, which of course is on the 1st of March 2022 at 2 o'clock. So, as I said before, there being no urgent items, I'll draw this meeting to a close, and thank you, members and officers, for a very constructive afternoon. Safe journeys.